Hello and welcome to another class feature video. This is now my fourth. This is the Elementalist for Fabula Ultima, a guide by Fabula Points. Me. So like with all my other videos, just going to jump straight into it. So the Elementalist is your typical black mage. They are the elemental magic wielders. Um, so yeah, they get a bunch of skills. I'll just go over through them now, go over through the spells and give my thoughts. So first, the free benefits, they get mind points increased by 5 and they can perform ritualism rituals, which is pretty fun. Mind points is always useful, especially as they're going to use it a lot. First skill is cataclysm. So the way it works, when you cast a spell with the duration of instantaneous, if you have an arcane weapon equipped, you may increase the total spell cost by up to skill level times 10 mind points. If you do so and the spell deals damage to one or more creatures, it deals 5 extra damage to each creature for every 10 mind points. So if you put 3 levels into this, you spend an extra 30 mind points on top of the spell's cost and it will deal an extra 15 damage. Which, being honest, isn't that good. Um, I will go through the number crunching a bit later, because there's some spells I want to compare against to show you why this isn't really a good bang for your buck if you're going for damage. But if you want to like role play like the Elementalist who like charges up their attack to do more, then by all means. But like for you min maxers out there, it's probably one to avoid. The next skill, Elemental Magic, this is your bread and butter. Every time you learn this skill, you learn an Elementalist skill. Offensive Elementalist skills use Insight plus Willpower for the magic check, so they're the stats you're going to want to raise. I'll go for spells in a second. Magic Artillery. When you cast an offensive spell, if you have an arcane weapon equipped, you gain a bonus to your magic check equal to skill level times 2. With 3 skill investments, you can get up to +6 every time you cast an offensive spell, which is pretty good. Not gonna lie. Like it's always nice to have that option. But also, because this is such a multi-class heavy game, this doesn't say when you cast an Elementalist offensive spell. It just says when you cast an offensive spell. So your Chimera spells or your Entropist spells or whatever, um, any other kind of class spells will also benefit from this. So like if you want to go like Entropist main and you multi-class into the Elementalist, you can totally pick this up and it will help your Entropist spells. So that's quite useful. I really like that. Ritual Elementalism. You may perform rituals that fall within the Elementalism discipline. They use Insight plus Willpower again, so they're going to be your primary stats. And then Spellblade. If you're planning on being like a staff wielding offensive mage, this is useless for you. But if you want to be like a kind of, they call it a gish, which is like your like sword wielding spellcaster kind of mix, then this is quite good for you. So the way it works, when you cast an offensive spell targeting a single creature, that's important. If the spell has a total mind cost of skill times 10 or lower, and you have one or more bow, brawling, dagger, flail, spear, or sword weapons equipped, you may choose one of those weapons. If you do, your magic check for the spell will use the chosen weapon's accuracy check formula. So if you cast it through a bronze sword, you'll use Dex and Might plus 1 instead of Insight plus Willpower. So again, if you wanted to be like the sword wielder, or even if you use like a bow or something and you wanted to have some elemental magic, then this is really good for you. So those are the skills. I'll show you some synergies now. If we go to the actual spells, so there's quite a few here, and there's an extra one that you can get with heroic skills. So I'll kind of go quickly over them, but they're all on the page here. So if people want to pause and have a good read, they can, but I'll kind of fire through them. So Elemental Shroud, it's you target up to 3 creatures. It costs 5 MP per target, and it lasts for scene, so the whole time. So you basically you weave magical energy and protect the targets from the fury of the elements. You choose a damage type: air, bolt, fire, earth, or ice. Until the spell ends, each target gains resistance against the chosen damage type. So if you're fighting a boss that suddenly deals ice damage, you can give 3 creatures resistance to it, which is really good. And also, you don't have to keep retaking it to have different damage types. You just have to recast it and choose a different one. So that for a single spell or a single skill in the elemental magic, a single point into the elemental magic, you get a spell that can do 5 different resistances when you change it. So that's a pretty good kind of investment. Elemental weapon. This is more for if you want to either support your allies or you want to be the sword fighting spellcaster we talked about with the Spellblade. You imbue a weapon with elemental energy, choose a damage type airball, earth, fire, or ice. Until the spell ends, all damage dealt by the weapon becomes the chosen damage type. If you have that weapon equipped while you cast a spell, you can perform a free attack with it as part of the same action. So if you realize something's weak to fire, say you can cast elemental weapon, change your sword to fire damage, and then do a free attack with your now flaming sword. Which, if you were going to go that way, I would recommend this skill. But we're going to get onto some of the elemental magic now. So Flare. It only targets one creature, costs 20 magic points. So you channel a single ray of fire towards your foe as temperature is so high it will pierce through most defenses. Target suffers high roll plus 25 fire damage, and damage dealt by this spell ignores resistances. So there's some things to consider. One, this doesn't mean that it also ignores immunities. So if someone's immune to fire damage, this won't work. But ignore resistances sounds more powerful than it is. If you're in an area where there's a lot of fire things around, then yeah, awesome. But because most monsters won't either A, won't have lots of resistances, or B, you'll probably end up taking more than one elemental magic type, it probably won't come up as often as you feel like it is. Because like I know some people on the Reddit chats thinking this was overpowered. I really don't think it is. But yeah, next one, Folger, up to 3 creatures, and it costs 10 times target. You have electricity into a weave of crackling bolts. Each target hit by the spell suffers high roll 15 bolt damage, but this has a specific opportunity. So if you crit with it, each target by the hit of the spell suffers dazed. So this is less damage than Flare, but you can hit up to 3 creatures. So if you hit 2 creatures, that'll cost the same amount of MP, being 20, and then you do high roll plus 15 twice, and it'll ultimately do more damage. So if you feel like hitting multiple targets, then obviously like this spell will end up doing more damage overall, but this one focuses fire on one specifically. So it depends how you want to play. But Glacies is exactly the same, but as a Folger, but with ice damage, and the opportunity does slow instead. Iceberg is the same as Flare, but for ice, so it deals high roll for 25 ice damage, exactly the same. Ignis is your Fulgur and Glacies, but for fire damage, and the opportunity is shaken. Then Soaring Strike, I used this in my first ever video, to be honest. It was building Freya from Final Fantasy IX, who's a Dragoon, and I used a spear to reword this as if it was the jump attack. But basically, it means you can perform a free attack with a melee weapon you have equipped. This attack may target creatures that can only be targeted by ranged attacks, and it does extra damage if you have a brawling or a spear. And if you hit a flying target with this attack, you can force them to land immediately. So this is oh no, I have a like a spear or a sword or whatever, and there's a flying enemy here. This is how I can land them and hit them. So it's good if you want to lean into like the Dragoon kind of archetype, but like this doesn't actually add, unless you're using a brawling or a spear, this doesn't actually add any damage. It just lets you hit them. Which, if there's only one kind of enemy left and you're unable to hit them, like that does, that is pretty bad. But yeah, it's one where if you were going for the Spellblade focused, I'd get. Cool. So moving on, Terra is just like the Fulgur Glacies and Ignis with earth damage. However, it cannot target flying creatures, and the opportunity is pretty cool. Each target by the spell performs one fewer action on their turn to a minimum of 0 actions. So if you crit with this, you could potentially shut down all the bad guys you hit for a turn, which is amazing. Thunderbolt is the bolt damage flare. Those resistances again. Ventus is the air version of like your Folger Glacies and all that. Opportunity makes flying targets land immediately. And Vortex is just a whirling vortex. Roaring gale surrounds you, blowing away arrows and bullets. Until the spell ends, you gain a +2 bonus to your defense against ranged attacks. So that's quite like a support kind of spell. So it's a lot of the same thing reflavored to different damage types and different opportunities. So you could easily, like if you wanted to go for in Elementalist who targets multiple people at once and you wanted to cover all the damage types, you would have to invest into 5 of these, which is a lot. But like it's going to depend on your playstyle. Like you might kind of want like a few of them to hit one target, a few hit multiple. It's going to be really down to you. But the other thing we obviously need to talk about is the heroic skills. So let's get the core book out. So the first one from Elementalist is this one called Powerful Spell. When you cast a spell that deals damage to one or more creatures, that spell deals 5 extra damage to each creature. The amount of damage is increased to 10 if you are level 40 or higher. So this is just straight extra damage, which is always good. Like there's no downsides to this. Um, you can get this when you max out Chimerist, Elementalist, Entropist, or Spiritist. So you could, in theory, get this on another class, swap into the Elementalist, and still get this bonus, and it'll work. So this is just every time you cast a spell. So this is pretty good, but there are other options we need to consider before we kind of decide to choose this. First one is I'm going to show you right at the bottom, Volcano. You learn the ultimate Elementalist spell, Volcano. So it costs 40 MP. The target is special. The duration instantaneous. So what happens? You choose one option. Either one creature you see suffers 50 fire damage, or you choose any number of creatures you can see. Each of them suffers 30 fire damage. And then if you're level 20, increases by 5. If you're level 40, increases by 10. Damage ignores resistances and immunities. This is why I mentioned earlier that spells that said ignore resistances don't ignore immunities. This one does. So a few things to talk about here. One, if you wanted to be like, say if you wanted to be like an ice mage or something, you need to speak to your DM to see if they're willing to reflavor this, because like you can easily call this avalanche, have it identical, except every time it says fire, it says ice, for example. Um, so I'd see if you didn't want to focus on fire damage, if your DM would allow that, most I reckon do. But this is where we can compare um, all the details so I can show you how cataclysm isn't that great. So let's pretend you're attacking multiple people at once and you're going to take Ignis, so you do fire damage. So if you're targeting 3 creatures, that's 30 MP and it's high roll plus 15 fire damage. And then if you take 3 in Cataclysm, you deal an extra 15, so that becomes high roll plus 30 fire damage for a massive 60 MP cost. However, if we go back to Volcano, it's 40 MP and it targets 30 fire damage. So there's no high roll in this, it just hits. So your 3 targets, you can potentially miss some. With Ignis, you can't miss with Volcano. So you miss the high roll, but it's 20 MP less. So you don't have to roll. And this, you can obviously like, the damage is comparable to this, but for less MP. So I really don't think that Cataclysm is worth it, to be honest. Again, if you want to power things up, or even if you wanted to power Volcano up and spend an extra 30, so it'll cost 70 points, and then they'd suffer 45 fire damage each. Like you can go for it, but I really don't think it's worth the investment. So those are the two heroic skills from the core book. There's 3 in the Atlas book, so let's bring that up. So your first one is Bimagus. This one is a bit complicated, but you have to have mastered 2 or more classes among Elementalist, Entropist, and Spiritist. So, which is interesting because where are we? The powerful spell that you choose Chimerist, Elementalist, Entropist, or Spiritist, and this one doesn't have Chimerist. I don't understand why, but either way, if you have an arcane weapon equipped, once per turn, you can use an action to spend 20 to 50 mind points to perform the spell action for free twice, casting 2 spells without needing to pay their MP costs. If you do, the 2 spells must have a combined total MP cost equal to lower than 20 plus the amount of MP used to this skill, and the second spell must be either equal or lower to half the MP cost of the first spell. So, for example, if we spend all 50 points, say, we can then cast Volcano where are we? Down Volcano, which costs 40. So that means we have 10 free, 10 spare there, and 30 and 20 here. So we still have 30 mind points to play with. And then if we went back to where are we? The Elementalist, we'd have 30 to do, so we could then hit like a flare or something. Yeah, it doesn't say it has to target one or more people, so you are able to. It's basically ability to cast twice in a turn and get 20 magic points for free. So this is incredible. Like I personally would take this every time, and I would actually kind of try and work out spell combinations that I wanted to use with this in mind the entire way through. Like you've got to be level 30 or higher, but you can get Elementalist, Entropist, and Spiritist all to 10, unlock this, and then you have a massive amount of spells that you're able to do. Like you could do a Volcano and a Spiritist heal spell. Like there are options. So I think this is great. But there's more to talk about. So the next one is called Fast Rituals. So this one adds Chimerist back in. So it's Chimerist, Elementalist, Entropist, and Spiritist. When you initiate a ritual during a conflict scene, the ritual is created with 2 fewer sections than normal, to a minimum of 4 sections. So if you're the kind of person that ritual casts within combat scenes a lot, this is great. But honestly, like the Bimagus is so good that I don't see me wanting to take something like this. And then the last one, Magic Guard. When you perform the guard action, if you choose not to provide cover to another creature, you gain the following benefit until start of your next turn, which is when a creature you see casts a spell, after that creature pays for the spell MP cost, you can spend an amount of mind points equal to 10 plus that spell's total MP cost in order to completely stop the casting of the spell and negate its effects. It says the spell isn't cast, but the creature is still considered to have spent their action. So one thing to be mindful of this, if you have a Chimerist on your team, and you do this, the spell isn't cast, so the Chimeras won't be able to learn that spell. So that's just a consideration here. This is like if you have a boss that's charging up a spell to use to try and wreck the party and you've got a lot of mind points spare, I can see this working, but like again, Bimagus is just so good. Like the only reason I can see to take something other than Bimagus is if you start with an elementalist and max it before you hit level 30, then you can pick like Volcano or something, and then as you get everything else and then hit 30, you can then pick Bimagus, and then you can just have a laugh and wreck everything. So yeah, that is the Elementalist. So my thoughts again, there's kind of 2 ways you can go around it. You can go the Spellblade option, or you can go like with a staff offensively. I think it's really powerful. I know the creators of this game also think it's very powerful because if you look at all the classic characters they've built and add up all the classes, Elementalist is the second highest number. If you want to see what the numbers are, have a look at my newest build videos where I did the Revenger and I've done the Metamorphosis so far. I show you like the table I've made there each time. But yeah, if you're going offensive magic, Elementalist is a must. Um, yeah, there's not really more I can say about this. So yeah, I'm still using this as videos. I need to work out like an outro. But thank you all for watching and goodbye.